Welcome to episode 76 of The Corner of Knit and Tea. I'm Laura, also known as Fluffy Hay on Ravelry, Fluffy Kira on Instagram and Twitter. I blog over at thecornerofknitandtea.com, and that's where this episode's show notes will be. I have an Etsy shop called The Stash Buckler Adventures in Yarn, where I sell my handspun yarns, and we have a Ravelry group, and if you haven't joined, you should come over and join us. We do some knit-alongs and a little bit of chat, and it's a fun place. So hi, how are you? Welcome. It is Sunday, February 21st. It has been a crazy busy weekend, and I am sitting down a little later than normal to record, so the light may be just a smidge different. Yesterday was a beautiful 70-degree day, and so I wanted to take advantage of some of the time, and I did get outside for a long walk, which was really nice. 70 is absolutely unheard of here in February, and it's going to be getting cooler again this week, probably back down into the 40s, so it was a nice little respite. I took my car to the dealership yesterday to get it serviced, which wouldn't be of note, except that a knitting friend walked in while I was there, and I knew she had a Subaru, but of course I had no idea she'd be there. So we had like a little impromptu knitting circle for about an hour while we waited for our cars to get done. So that was kind of nice. This morning we got up early and there was an FPV race, first person viewing. That is a group of people who fly usually radio controlled quadcopters, and they fly them using goggles, which is called first person viewing, particularly because they can fly them a further range than line of sight by using the goggles and having a camera on the craft. Anyway, they were doing a race for some local people, just a bunch of local flyers getting together on someone's land. He had invited them to use his land, and as it turns out, it was about 15 minutes away from our house, and it's kind of out in the middle of nowhere with rolling farm country and just huge pastures of land, and so it was really neat to get out there and see that. Unfortunately, it was a little cooler today. It was 50-ish, but there were really cold winds, so I bundled up in my woolies and went, and we sat and watched for a few hours, and then we had some lunch, and now Wes has some friends over this afternoon, so I kind of hid in my craft room to talk to you. So I hope that you have had a wonderful week. For those of you who are joining me for the first time, welcome. I hope you enjoy. For those of you who have come back, thank you for joining me again. And let's get right to it. The first thing I always talk about on the podcast is, of course, what I am drinking. Today, I don't have any fancy packaging. I am drinking some chai that was sent to me by a lovely viewer. It is from Tea India, and I will post a link to where you can purchase in my show notes. And I am drinking in my National World War I Museum Poppy's mug. The National World War I Museum is here in Kansas City, and they have been doing celebrations since 2014, the centennial of the Great War. So I picked up a mug, and this is lovely chai tea. I have had this before, and it is just delicious. So I decided to brew myself a cup of some spicy warm to keep me warm on this chilly afternoon. So that is delicious. That will be keeping me warm, and I will post links to everything in the show notes. So let's get started. This week actually will probably be a little on the short side. I feel like I've been crafting a lot, and I don't have a lot to show for it, so I think I have an idea where some of that went, but let's go ahead and get right into it. Last week I showed you a project that I had started. It was the first skein of yarn that I bought this year, and I was knitting the antler mittens, and last week I had a partial of mitten 1, and mitten 1 is now complete. This is the antler pattern by Tin Can Knits, and the yarn is Dreamin' Color Classy in the Spring Tickle colorway. I ordered a skein of this because I had a hat that someone else had knit for me that I love, and I wanted to go ahead and make a set for the winter. The other thing that I also did is I went ahead and I did a liner in a purple lace weight that I showed you. I have that here. This was a local dyeing company. It is called Two Windows Dye Company, and it was some beautiful purple lace weight. So I have my full liner in there, and my first mitten is complete. I actually finished most of the second mitten this morning. I just need to actually go ahead and cut the tail and wind it through the top. So I have finished the body of the second mitten, and then I will need to do the thumb maybe this afternoon. I have some other things going on, but the thumb, and then I just need to knit the corresponding liner, and then I will be all set with a set of mittens. And since it's going to be cold this week, I might even get to wear them, and I might even push to get them done so that I can wear them this week. So that is the first project. It's knitting up hugely quickly because, of course, these are worsted weight mittens on, I'm using a size 8 needle. The pattern is a paid for pattern. I actually got it free during the 12 days of Christmas when she was giving away the patterns, but that is what I am working on and almost finished with, and very happy about because this one is nice and toasty. So, and that is in my Homespun House alpaca love bag. So that is project number 1. The second project that I showed you last week, or one of the projects that I showed you that I was working on, was a sweater, and it was the Pharaoh pullover, and I was knitting it out of Jill Draper Empire. And actually, I talked to you on Sunday, and then on Monday I had a holiday, and I went ahead and sat down and knit up a sleeve for the sweater. And I posted a picture on Instagram, and it was beautiful looking, but it did not fit. And the yarn itself was kind of crisp and not super drapey or soft, and so I looked at it and I realized that I was probably going to have to rip the sleeve because it wouldn't, I held it up and around my upper arm. It was a short sleeve, and it was going to be like skin tight when I seamed it, and it just wasn't what I wanted for that project. I realized that project probably called for something with a little bit more drape and something a little bit more woolen and airier, and this was definitely a worsted spun. It was kind of a heavy wool. So reluctantly I pulled that out, and I went looking for a few other patterns that I wanted to do, and did a couple more gauge swatches. And unfortunately, as it turned out, I could not get a good gauge with that yarn for a sweater that I wanted to make. And I stewed about it because I loved the color of the yarn, and I really, really wanted to love the yarn. And ultimately, I came to the conclusion that it is just not the yarn for me. So if you saw it last week or have seen some of my pictures on Instagram, I am selling it because it is partially used. I'm selling it at a reduced price. Almost all the yardage is there except for the small bit that I used for the swatches. I posted a photo of it as is, and it's on my Ravelry D-Stash page at a healthy discount. So if you are interested in trying some, please think about it. And that left me with a hole in my knitting, not literally, but a hole in what's on my needles, and I decided to pick another sweater. And so I picked one that I had queued recently. It is a brand new pattern, but I thought it was really interesting looking. It is the Hilda pattern by Bristol Ivy, and it is kind of an hourglass sweater. And one of the things that makes it so interesting, and let me see if I have I didn't print out all the pictures. You can see sort of a little bit of it here, is this mesh on this side. The back of the sweater is a combination of mesh and knit through the back loop twisted ribbing, and that's what creates, she uses those fabrics to or those textures to create kind of the hourglass shape. And so I thought this would be a really neat sweater to do. I had some yarn in the stash, and let me see if I had actually swatched this a while ago. This is Woolney's Merino DK, and it is a dark blue in the Moses colorway. It is, like I said, a dark blue, and then it almost has like a little bit of a hint of teal to it, which is not showing up real well today. But so this is the yarn that I am using. It is not quite the same gauge, but I believe the math will work because I am just knitting a slightly different sized sweater based on, I'm using the numbers of a different size than what I would knit for myself if I were exactly on gauge. So I'm technically knitting the size larger because my gauge is a little bit smaller. And I've had a little bit of trouble starting out and establishing the pattern. It's not terribly hard, but I think my brain wasn't quite into it this week, so I've been working on it a little bit. I have very little done, just the first probably 6 or 8 rows, but you can see just a little bit. Oh, and of course I'm right in the middle of the ribbing section, which would make that hard, but you can see just a little bit of the mesh and ribbing on the back. There's like this little mesh section on either side, and I'm not giving too much away because you can tell that from the pictures in the pattern and on Ravelry. So that is what I am working on right now, and I hope to have more of it to show you next week so that it will look a little bit more like a sweater. But that is what I have been working on and what I will probably try and work on this evening. Technically, I guess it looks like this. This is the, well, no, yes, this is the top. So, and then there will be a collar on there. And that is, like I said, a new pattern from Bristol Ivy, and it was either $6 or $7 and available on Ravelry. So that is what I am working on, and that one is in this lovely geisha bag that I got from Knit and Stitch Bits on Etsy, and this was a gift from her, and I love it, and it's perfect to hold all of my cakes of yarn and my pattern and everything, and if I scrunch it all in there, it will even zip, although I'm not going to do that right now. So that is the second knit that's on the needles. I will probably do another charity hat this week. I have a bunch of yarn and several patterns that have been free lately. So I have some hats that I will work on. I would really like to start a foolproof cowl, which is a pattern on Ravelry, and the name of who designed it is escaping me at the moment, but I will bring the details if I cast that on. And I'm trying to think, oh, I want to do some washcloths for a project that Pink Hair Girl Knits podcast and her daughter, I Am Rachel Swims, are doing. It is a charity project down there in South Africa, and I wanted to do some washcloths and maybe a hat for that. So those are the things that will be coming up on my needles. I'm sorry, I'm just a little discombobulated. We've got people in the house and I just feel like I'm leaving things off, but that is the knitting this week. I'm just going to take a brief sip of tea and then we will move on to the spins. So last week when I chatted with you, I had half the singles spun towards another spin. It was a beautiful braid of skein, which is out of Australia, Skein Yarns and Fiber, and it was a beautiful kind of greens and yellows braid, and I finished that this week and actually put it up into the shop, I think on Thursday, and the skein just came apart, so let me just wind it real fast so that it will be nice to look at, and it came out beautifully. It is a couple different shades of green. There's like a grassy green and kind of a minty bluey green, and then it had some yellows, and it came out super pretty. It is not wound up super pretty because it fell apart while I was holding it, but I think you can kind of get the idea, and there are better pictures up in my shop. It is sport weight, about 320 yards. It was Australian merino, so it's super soft and squishy, and I think it would make a lovely pair of socks or a cowl or shawlette. It's very pretty and very subtle. So that is in the shop now if it at all interests you. I'm trying to show it from the best angle. That gives you a little bit of all the colors. I think the white bits are actually the ties that I'm using to hold it together. So that is what I finished earlier this week. I also showed you a second braid of Southern Cross fiber, and that was a Polworth bamboo blend in greens and pinks and purple and a little bit of gray. And I have finished the singles in that one. I have it on my Acreworks bobbin, but as you can see, there's some bright greens and some pink and some purple and gray. There's like a little bit of gray in there, and there are many more greens underneath. You can kind of, well, it looks like mostly mostly reds on the bobbin ends, but you can kind of see through there. Anyway, so I'm going to pull the singles off this bobbin and apply this afternoon as soon as we finish speaking. So that should go up in the shop in the next day or two, which brings me to what I will be spinning next. My next spin and the final spin for February is going to be for the Harry Potter owl. I have mentioned in past podcasts that I am spinning different constructions of yarn this term for the Harry Potter House Cup, which is kind of a game that I play on Ravelry for imaginary internet points. I am doing a spinning project this winter, doing a single ply, a 2-ply, a traditional 3-ply, and a cable ply. And if you remember, I have already done the 2-ply. That's kind of my standard default anyway. And I just recently finished the cable plied yarn. So now it is time to tackle my true 3-ply. This is a beautiful braid of New Zealand Polwarth, and actually the colors aren't, there's a little bit more color variation to this. There are some spots that are almost green and some blues, and that actually might be a little bit better, and a few streaks of purple in there, and it is a beautiful braid. It was dyed by Maud and Me, who I believe is no longer in business. She used to live in New Zealand, and she moved back to the States a couple years ago, and I'm not really sure she reopened her shop, but it was named for her beautiful little cat, Maud, who is on the cards. And this is the colorway Falling Slowly. And it is almost 5 ounces, and I am going to divide it into 3 small sections. And then I am going to spin each section slightly differently. I suspect I'll probably do almost like a fractal 3-ply, where the first section I'll tear into tiny strips, the second section I'll tear into medium strips, and the third section I will probably go ahead and just spin straight through, and then I will 3-ply all together on my wheel for a traditional 3-ply yarn, which I like. I spoke about it a little bit last week. I think they're a little bit more rounded than a chain ply or Navajo ply. So that is the project that I'm going to work on this week, and I will post plenty of photos on my Instagram and hopefully have this one done to show you next week. So that is the podcast for today. I told you it would be a short one. Like I said, I feel like I've been super busy this week, but I haven't gotten a ton done to show and talk about. I did announce the winners for the Selfish Craft Along, and I posted those in the thread earlier this week. So congratulations to those winners. If you have not checked that thread, you should to claim your prizes. So I believe that's about all I have for you today. I hope you are having a wonderful weekend, and I will say, as I always do, until I see you again, happy knitting, happy spinning, happy sipping, and I'll see you next time. Bye.